Have you ever felt like no matter how hard you work to become a better person, life keeps testing you in deeper, stranger, and more unexpected ways? Just when you think you've finally found peace, another wave of challenge rises, as if the universe itself is asking, are you truly ready for what comes next? In this next chapter of our mental healing journey, we'll uncover one of the most subtle yet powerful tests on the spiritual path, a lesson that reveals itself when you believe you've left old struggles behind, only to find them returning in new forms. It's like walking through a familiar dream, sensing that you've been here before, though the faces and scenery have changed. Why does this happen? And what is life truly trying to teach you through these repeating patterns? Let's take a quiet breath together, and step into the wisdom of ancient Buddhist teachings to discover the hidden meaning behind these mysterious, looping lessons. Picking up where we left off, Sonam was beginning to realize that perhaps the problem wasn't the place, the partners, or the circumstances, but something quietly persistent within himself. After he finished sharing his long, troubled story, the old nun Pema sat silently for a few moments, letting his words settle into the stillness between them. Then she spoke, her voice soft but carrying a weight of knowing. "Tell me, merchant," she asked, "in all these partnerships that ended in disappointment, what is the one thing that was present in every single situation?" Sonam lowered his gaze, thought for a moment, and then answered with a bitter sense of recognition. "Me. I was the one present in every situation." "Exactly," Pema replied gently. "And what did you do each time a partnership began to unravel?" Without hesitation, Sonam confessed, "I tried harder. I worked to make him understand my value, to defend my position, to prove that I was being treated unfairly." Pema nodded, as if she had heard this story in 100 different forms from countless other restless hearts. "And did that approach ever truly solve the real problem?" Sonam shook his head slowly, beginning to sense where this conversation was leading. With infinite patience, Pema continued, "The Buddha taught that we cannot escape the results of our actions by simply changing our location. We carry our patterns with us, wherever we go, because they do not live in the outer world, they live in our consciousness. Moving to a new town might give temporary relief, but unless we address the inner conditions that give birth to these patterns, they will return, again and again, like weeds sprouting from roots left deep in the soil." She helped Sonam see that it wasn't bad luck or difficult people that haunted his relationships, but a deeply rooted belief within himself, the belief that he constantly needed to fight for recognition and respect. This belief distorted his perceptions, causing him to see harmless remarks as subtle insults, neutral situations as personal attacks. It made him defensive, demanding, and suspicious, which, in turn, pushed people away and confirmed his deepest fear, that he wasn't truly valued. "But how do I break this pattern?" Sonam asked, a note of desperation in his voice. "I've tried to behave differently, to choose wiser partners, to learn from my mistakes, yet nothing seems to hold for long." Pema smiled, a quiet, compassionate smile born of long experience. "You've been trying to change your outer behavior while leaving the root belief untouched. It's like trying to stop a tree from bearing bitter fruit by plucking the fruit, while leaving the bitter roots intact. Unless you heal the root, the belief that you must fight to be respected, it will continue producing the same painful result, no matter where you plant your tree." Over the following weeks, Pema taught Sonam a practice that seemed so simple. He doubted it could work, but its simplicity was its strength. Whenever he noticed himself feeling unappreciated, defensive, or restless for recognition, he was to pause and quietly ask himself, "What if this person actually does value me, but I'm interpreting their behavior through the filter of my old fear?" Instead of immediately defending himself or demanding acknowledgement, Sonam would gently question his own assumption, and in doing so, he began to loosen the knot that had bound him for so many years. Picking up from where we left Sonam's journey, something remarkable began to happen when he simply paused and questioned his old fears. He started experimenting with a new, gentle approach, assuming positive intent from others, and responding with curiosity rather than reflexive defensiveness. The change didn't arrive like a thunderclap. Old patterns, after all, have roots that run deep. They don't dissolve overnight like sugar vanishing into a cup of hot tea. But slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, Sonam began to notice subtle shifts. When he stopped reacting defensively to what he perceived as insults or slights, most of those moments revealed themselves to be nothing more than misunderstandings, not personal attacks, and as he let go of his need to demand constant appreciation, people around him naturally began to acknowledge his contributions with genuine warmth. The more he released his suspicion toward others, the more open and trusting they became in return. About 6 months later, Sonam formed a new business partnership with a trader named Tenzin. Predictably, familiar tensions surfaced once again. But this time, instead of fleeing to a different town, or blaming his partner, Sonam recognized the old pattern reappearing like a shadow cast by the past. And consciously, he chose to respond differently. When feelings of being unappreciated arose, he expressed his needs clearly and calmly, without attacking Tenzin's character. When disagreements came, Sonam made an effort to truly listen, seeking understanding rather than silently preparing his counterarguments. And when success arrived, instead of hoarding praise like a miser guarding his last gold coin, he shared credit generously. For the very first time in his adult life, Sonam witnessed a partnership not only survive its inevitable challenges, but actually grow stronger by facing those difficulties openly and constructively. The old pattern that had haunted him for so long was finally broken. Not through running away, not through replacing people or changing locations, but by patiently transforming the inner landscape that had been shaping his outer world. And now, dear listener, if you find yourself trapped in familiar situations that keep repeating, no matter how hard you try to grow, evolve, or move on, perhaps it's your own consciousness offering you another precious opportunity. An invitation to turn inward and heal what has quietly been calling for your attention all along. The fact that these patterns return isn't a punishment. It may be a sign that you're finally strong enough to face them without avoidance. So take a moment, bring to mind a situation in your life that feels frustratingly familiar. It might be a recurring relationship dynamic, a persistent work conflict, or a personal struggle that seems to follow you, no matter how far you travel or how much you change. Instead of immediately looking for ways to fix, flee, or escape it, ask yourself this: what is this pattern trying to teach me about myself? What old belief, what lingering wound might be quietly creating this repetition? As you hold this question, breathe slowly and deeply, gently entertain the possibility that this pattern isn't your enemy. It's your teacher. As we continue from Sonam's turning point, there's one vital truth we must embrace. Every time a familiar pattern repeats itself, it's not a curse, it's another invitation, an opening to approach your deepest struggles not with frustration, but with curiosity, not with the desperate urge to escape, but with a quiet willingness to learn. Each repetition is a chance, a sacred opportunity, to practice a new way of being, to strengthen new pathways in your mind and heart, to prove to yourself that meaningful change is possible, not in spite of repetition, but because of it. Through these recurring patterns, Life offers you the opportunity to heal wounds that might otherwise remain buried deep in the shadows of your unconscious. Real transformation rarely arrives through escape. And never through perfection. It comes through conscious, imperfect, patient engagement, like Sonam discovering that his conflicts weren't bad luck, but invitations to heal the deepest fears within him. You too are being shown that your repeating patterns are doorways to the most profound spiritual growth your soul could ever ask for. Right now, you might be standing at the edge of an invisible cliff within yourself. Everything inside you wants to step back. But this time, there's nowhere left to retreat. Behind you lies the barren landscape of every discarded dream. Every betrayal you swore you'd never experience again. Every hope that turned to ash in your trembling hands. And this isn't just another difficult chapter. It feels like the end of everything you once believed about life. About love. About the possibility that goodness actually matters. Friends, if you still have any nearby, might offer you words they mean well. Things will get better, they whisper, but the words land hollow. Stay positive, they suggest, but positivity feels like a luxury you can no longer afford. You've tried everything, haven't you? Prayer, meditation, therapy, countless self-help books, the whole doctrine of positive thinking. And still, the crushing weight of existence sits upon your chest like a stone that only seems to grow heavier with each passing day. What makes this darkness so utterly devastating is that it doesn't come to those who've abandoned goodness, it comes to those who gave everything to it. You're here because you loved too deeply, hoped too purely, believed too completely in the idea that the world could be just and kind. The people who play it safe, who love only when it's easy, who help others when it's convenient, they never face this final test. Because they never risk enough of themselves to reach the breaking point you're standing at now. In the remote, mist-covered mountains of ancient China, there lived a young woman named Min. Her story is one of quiet resilience, illuminating why this most difficult of trials comes only to the most courageous souls. Min was the beloved daughter of a prosperous merchant family. Her life, like a delicate tapestry, was woven with the gentle threads of contentment. She spent serene mornings helping her mother tend the herb garden. Warm afternoons were filled with graceful calligraphy lessons from her scholarly father. And in the soft glow of evening, she'd dream of the future with her childhood sweetheart, Zhang Wei. It was a life painted in soft pastels, brushed with tenderness and promise. Continuing from where we left Min's story, this gentle-hearted young woman wasn't just known for her beauty or grace, she was cherished for something far rarer, her open, generous heart. In her village, people would say the flowers seemed to bloom brighter when Min passed by. She was always the first to help an elderly neighbor, to tend to sick children, or to offer a warm meal to a passing beggar. Kindness wasn't something she practiced. It was who she was. But then, as life often does, tragedy came without warning. A plague swept through the region like a shadow no one could outrun. In the span of 6 unbearable months, Min lost everything: her parents, her younger brother, her beloved fiancé Zhang Wei, and nearly every other member of her extended family. The family business collapsed without her father's steady hand, and at just 19 years old, Min found herself utterly alone, penniless, without a home, without a name in a world that suddenly seemed built to punish those who dared to love too much. With no family willing to shelter her and no prospects for survival, Min walked for days, her feet blistered and her heart shattered, until she stumbled upon a remote Buddhist temple hidden high in the misty mountains. There, the elderly abbess, Master Lian, welcomed her without question. She was given a simple robe, a narrow bed, and modest meals of rice and vegetables. And for the first time in endless months, Min felt safe enough to truly feel. The grief that rose in her was tidal, so consuming that there were moments she forgot to eat, forgot to breathe, even forgot that she was supposed to go on living. The pain was relentless, an ache that felt like it would hollow her out completely. Yet, heartbreak wasn't her only battle. As the seasons turned and months passed, a quieter, far more dangerous poison began to seep into her spirit. A single, bitter question: had loving so deeply been her greatest mistake? If she had guarded her heart, if she had loved her family a little less fiercely, would their deaths have broken her this completely? Would she still be drowning in this endless sorrow? And perhaps, a terrible thought, those who lived selfishly, who cared for no one but themselves, had found a way to sidestep this kind of suffering altogether. One bone-cold winter night, with snow falling like soft ashes outside the temple walls, Min sat alone in the dimly lit meditation hall. At just 20 years old, she felt as though she had lived 100 lifetimes of grief. And one thought circled her weary mind like a ghost she couldn't shake: I can't do this anymore. I don't want to feel anything ever again. If this was what love led to, devastation, emptiness, despair, then perhaps numbness was the only refuge left. At dawn, the old abbess, Master Lian, found Min curled on a meditation cushion, her body trembling like a bird fallen from its nest. Without speaking, Master Lian sat beside her, the silence between them tender and heavy as snow. Then, in a voice so soft it barely stirred the air, she said, "Child, you look like someone who has reached the end of everything she thought she was. Tell me, what do you see when you look ahead?" Min's voice, when it came, was hollow as an empty well. "Nothing," she whispered. "I see nothing worth living for. Nothing worth hoping for. Everyone I ever loved is gone. And all my caring did was make their loss unbearable. I think I just want to stop feeling altogether." Master Lian gave a long, knowing nod, her gaze filled with infinite compassion. "And what do you imagine would happen if you succeeded?" she asked softly. "In stopping all feeling?" Min considered this, the question hanging in the quiet room like mist before dawn. Picking up from that tender, fragile dawn moment, Min's voice trembled as she answered Master Lian's question. "I suppose I would be safe. I wouldn't be hurt anymore. I could just exist without all this pain." The abbess gave a gentle, sorrowful smile, the kind that carried lifetimes of wisdom. "Yes," she said softly, "you would be safe. But tell me, child, would you still be you?" The question hung in the silent air like the scent of incense, slowly seeping into every empty space in Min's heart and mind. It lingered there, heavy and inescapable, and for the first time, Min truly considered it. She began to see, with a clarity that felt almost unbearable, that the very capacity for love, the thing causing her so much unbearable grief, was also the core of who she was. If she chose numbness, she might survive, but it would be an empty survival. A life without feeling, without joy, without the fierce tenderness that had once made flowers bloom brighter around her. She would still draw breath, but she would no longer be truly alive. Sensing the shift in Min's heart, Master Lian spoke again, her voice as soft as a prayer carried on the wind. "There's something you need to understand about this darkness you're experiencing," she said gently. "This isn't punishment for loving too much. It's the price of admission to a love so vast, so boundless, that your current heart isn't big enough to hold it." She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. The person you were, the one who loved beautifully, but with attachment, who cared deeply, but needily, that version of you must die. Not as punishment, but to make way for someone who can love infinitely. Min looked at the abbess, her face a mixture of confusion and disbelief. "But how can there be a love greater than what I felt for my family?" she asked, her voice cracking under the strain. Without replying immediately, Master Lian pointed to a single lotus blossom, bravely blooming in a small pond near the temple courtyard, its petals shining pale pink against the winter frost. "Look at that lotus," she said softly. "It loves the water, the mud, the sunlight, and the cold air equally. It doesn't demand that the water never evaporate, or that the sun never set. It loves completely, without attachment to permanence. This is the love your soul is being prepared for. A love not chained to outcomes. A love that shines not to avoid loss, but simply because it's in its nature to shine." Over the months that followed, Master Lian guided Min through what might have seemed, to anyone else, the most impossible and counterintuitive practice. Instead of trying to heal her grief or find meaning in her losses, Min was taught to sit quietly with her pain, to allow it to be there without demanding it change. Instead of endlessly asking why tragedy had chosen her, she learned to accept the mystery of life without needing neat, comforting explanations, and rather than sealing off her heart from future pain, she was gently encouraged to open it again, not necessarily to specific people or outcomes, but to life itself, in all its unpredictable, terrible, and breathtaking beauty. It wasn't a quick transformation, and it certainly wasn't a painless one. There were nights Min felt like she was drowning all over again. Days when the temptation to numb herself returned with crushing force. But slowly, like dawn creeping in after a long winter night, something extraordinary began to rise within her darkness. Min discovered that when she stopped loving in order to protect herself from loss, her capacity for love became limitless. When she let go of her grip on how others should return her love, her heart opened with a grace she had never known. And when she accepted that everything she cherished would one day change, fade, or die, she discovered a love that was finally, gloriously fearless. 2 years after first arriving at the temple, broken and hollowed by sorrow, Min had become someone her old self would no longer recognize. She was still capable of deep feeling, but she no longer needed those feelings to align with her preferences. She could love fully without clinging, care completely without controlling. She had touched what the Buddha called metta, loving kindness, a love that flows like sunlight across a field, touching everything it meets, asking for nothing in return. So, dear friends, perhaps the deepest pain isn't a sign that you've loved wrongly, but a quiet invitation to love more freely, more fearlessly, and without clinging. Like Min, you might find yourself standing at the edge of everything you once believed about life, love, and goodness, and though it feels like an ending, it's really the doorway to something vast, tender, and infinite within you. The Buddha taught that even the lotus only blooms after growing through thick, dark mud. Your grief, your heartbreak, your darkest nights, they're not punishments, but part of the soil nourishing the love that no loss can ever destroy. If you're here, if you've walked this far with us, it means you're one of the rare, courageous hearts willing to feel it all, and that is a sacred strength. If this message speaks to where you are right now, I invite you to pause, breathe, and remind yourself, your heart was made for this. And don't forget to subscribe to Daily Dharma Wisdom to follow the next chapter in our mental healing series, where together we'll uncover even deeper layers of resilience, compassion, and fearless love. Until next time, may your path be gentle, your heart be open, and your courage unshakable. See you in the next video.